Hey everybody, what's going on? So my name is Andrew Young, and I wanted to do a quick video today to talk about a new album from one of my favorite bands. That's Breaking Benjamin. Their new album is called Ember, and it was released on the 13th of April 2018, so this past Friday. So just a note before I get started, I'm not some official music reviewer or something. I'm just a really big fan of this band. I was looking forward to this album very much coming into this year. It was my most highly anticipated album coming into this year, especially after the first two singles they dropped. So I just want to kind of give my thoughts on the entire record. Just kind of, give you my opinion, would I recommend it to someone, how does it stack up to the other albums that they've dropped or other bands have dropped lately, and just my overall thoughts on it. So I want to start off with the good and then ultimately go into what's not so great and ultimately how this all comes together to create a really good record. So firstly, I thought the first two singles that they released here, Getting Ready for Ember, were phenomenal. That is Red Cold River and Feed the Wolf. These were dropped earlier this year with Red Cold River coming out in January of 2018. And I think the best word to describe both of these tracks was power. Really powerful songs that are really accentuated by the mix and the instruments that ultimately come together to create a really great piece of artwork between these two pieces. So one thing I really like to point out in terms of just this whole record in general, but especially these two singles, is the drums are very powerful on this record. And I think especially on Red Cold River, that comes through very clearly. I think the first example you see of this is when Ben Burnley is doing the huge scream at the start of Red Cold River. You have a triplet that's done on the drums with the kick drum. And I believe that's a really powerful way to do that. It was something that's just a little bit different than what they've been doing in the past. And I think it was cool enough where they kind of changed up the formula. One thing I think Breaking Benjamin suffers from, in my opinion, at least in past listening, is that a lot of times they'll use the exact same formula working with a song. So they'll take the formula that they use for Diarrhea Jane and just copy and paste it on a lot of different songs. And I think a lot of times while that works, like a good example is from Phobia's song Dance with the Devil. I thought it worked perfectly fine. But after a few years went by and it comes to work on something like, I don't know, Closer to Heaven or Failure from Dark Before Dawn, I think it kind of overstayed its welcome a little bit. So what I liked about Red Cold River and Feed the Wolf is that they changed up this formula just enough to keep it interesting. On Red Cold River, one of my favorite parts of that entire song was the opening chorus where it says, "I can't feel anything at all." I think that was a really powerful way of doing it, and I love how Ben Burnley's vocals come through on this song. He's using a really lower register of his voice that he really hasn't used since the early days of like Saturate and We Are Not Alone. And I think he did a really phenomenal job of using that and building up that intensity. And I think there's a lot of vocal harmony, which ultimately accentuates that just aggression and general sense of angst that all comes together and does really well. So really loved Red Cold River, and that was ultimately one of my favorite tracks on the album. Also, Feed the Wolf, I would say, is probably one of my favorites as well, if not my favorite. When this song first came out, it actually had to grow on me a little bit. When I first heard it, I didn't really initially like the key that it was done in. I didn't really like just exactly kind of how everything sounded. Just didn't really have that one like switch went off in my head that said, oh yeah, I like this, which is what happened with Red Cold River. So it took me a few listens to really kind of get onto the idea of Feed the Wolf, but I really love this song. I've really come to love it. I actually listen to it probably every day, if not, more than once, twice a day. And I actually just ran a marathon about a month ago, and during that marathon, I was listening to this song, like, going along the way for motivation. I think it's a really powerful song as well, like Red Cold River. I think it does a great job of kind of talking about the different topics of mental health and things on this record, and I think it does a really good job of kind of taking a cliche theme and coming at it with a new perspective. So the idea of feeding the wolf, so feeding this bad side of you, or feeding this side of you that's a little bit darker, nastier. And I think it does a good job of kind of, doing that metaphor. It's not, the repeated message of, I don't like who I'm becoming. It's not like someone took Animal I've Become by 3 Days Grace and copy and pasted it. It does a good job of kind of innovating and putting that same message across, but in a fresh new way. That's one thing I love about Feed the Wolf. I think it's one of my favorite songs on this album. I know I said that a second ago, but it's one that has a lot of staying power. It really stuck with me, and so that's one thing I'm a big fan of. So in terms of the other songs on this record, I think it's really kind of a mixed bag. There's a lot of songs on this album that I think are good, but aren't necessarily very memorable. But I think where this album does hit the nail on the head, it hits it very hard. So for example, on a song like Feed the Wolf and Red Cold River, I think those songs not only are very memorable, but they're very good songs that will stick with me for a very long time. Also, some other memorable tracks. I think Torn in Two is a really good track. I've listened to that a few times since the record came out. I think it kind of pays tribute to So Cold, which was a song from earlier in Breaking Benjamin's discography, especially toward the end of that song. It kind of has a refrain that reminds me a lot of So Cold, and I think that song really stuck with me as something that just was a little bit more memorable, kind of packed a bigger punch. I remember they released a little excerpt of it about a year ago. It was leaked online, and when I first heard that excerpt, I wasn't really excited for it, but after listening to the full version, and actually it being the longest track on the album, I think that it really kind of presented something cool to me and kind of stuck with me as well. The song Blood is also one that I really liked. It was the third single that dropped. Another really cool banger that can be used for motivation and stuff like that. It's just one of those songs that kind of hit right the nail on the head, and just kind of liked immediately. Don't really know exactly why, but it was just very powerful. Like I said, a lot of these songs on this album, I think they really do well in the sense that they're very powerful. Just the mixing combined with the lyrics combined with just everything kind of put together create for just really powerful music. And so, like I said, just those songs in particular really come together to really kind of create good songs, but also memorable ones. The song The Dark of You is a little bit slower of a track that reminds me a lot of Ashes of Eden from Dark Before Dawn. And initially, I was feeling kind of lukewarm to that song, Dark of You. I don't really groove particularly on Breaking Benjamin's slower songs. It's just my personal taste. But I can say after a few listens, this song has definitely grown on me a lot and actually reminds me a lot of both Ashes of Eden from Dark Before Dawn, but also Tool. One thing I saw online is that prior to the formation of Breaking Benjamin, Benjamin Burnley did a lot of acoustic gigs where he'd play a lot of Tool songs. And so I feel like a lot of that Maynard James Keenan type vocal comes through on The Dark of You, especially towards the chorus of this song. You just hear a lot of the harmonies and you hear a lot of the way the vocals are done and just the way the kind of timbre that the vocals have. It just kind of reminds me a lot of how Maynard James Keenan sings. And I think that's something that kind of helps it because it kind of gives this really kind of eerie sort of unsure sound to the verses and to the pre-chorus, and then the chorus comes in and you have that same kind of power that's present on the rest of the album. One thing I will say is that while this album is strong, it does have its flaws. There are some tracks on here, like I said, while our good songs are not very memorable, good examples are Close Your Eyes, Save Yourself, Down, and Psycho. I initially liked Psycho when it came out as a single. They dropped like 5 singles for this record, which I thought was a little bit too much. But when this song first dropped, I really liked it, especially the verses and that aggressive A-sharp guitar riff that really is kind of present throughout the intro and the verses of this song. But I think a common plight of a lot of Breaking Benjamin songs is that when it comes time to go to the chorus, they always they always kind of go back to this standard chorus that they've used since Dark Before Dawn. I feel like Dark Before Dawn was very copy and paste in terms of a lot of the choruses and themes, and I feel like with Psycho, they definitely went back to this idea. Close Your Eyes, same kind of thing. It was aggressive from the start, but just nothing stuck with me from that song that made me want to remember it. And same thing with Save Yourself. Save Yourself, even just sitting here trying to think about that song, like nothing just jumps out at me as, oh yeah, I remember this is super memorable. I think all the songs on this record do a pretty good job of ultimately coming and formulating this image of Ember, formulating this theme of Ember. And so I think in terms of a function of the general theme, all the songs do a really great job. But there are just some that are more memorable than others, and the ones that I'll come back to more. A song I haven't really mentioned is Tourniquet. So this is a song that I really need to listen to more, but it's one that's grown on me pretty quickly. It's an aggressive song. It's from my first listen, it was nothing that stuck with me a lot, but having gone back and checked it out just to kind of force myself to check it out again, I'm finding more things that I like about it as I go through. So generally speaking, one of my favorite songs from this record, because I want to kind of wrap it up, I'm already getting to like 10 minutes. I'd say Feed the Wolf is probably my favorite track from this record, along with Red Cold River. Those two are really at the top. It really depends on which day, really kind of which vibe I'm feeling and which one is my favorite. Blood is one that I really like as well. And let's see, I'm going to pick one more. And Torn in Two. So those 4 are probably my favorites on this record. I think it's definitely a step up from Dark Before Dawn. I think that record was very copy and paste just because of the way Benjamin Burnley composed it. He wrote the entire thing himself before any of the members of the band really came in and checked it out. I think this record does a really great job of showing off the different talents of the different guys that were recruited for this new lineup of Breaking Benjamin. There's a lot of vocal layering, a lot of vocal harmonies, which I've seen Breaking Benjamin twice in the past 2 years, and I can tell you, having seen him twice, all the guys in the band can really sing, and I think they do a really good job of kind of showing that here, and I'm excited to see how these songs play out live. I'm going to be seeing these guys in the summer with Five Finger Death Punch. I'm really excited for that show. So would I recommend this record to any hard rock fan? Definitely. I actually do believe this is probably a better album than 3 Days Grace's Outsider that came out about a month ago or so. Definitely one of the stronger rock records I've heard this year. I'd probably put it at like a 7 out of 10. There's a lot of songs on here that I'd say every song on here is good, but there's a handful that are memorable. For me, I really want to listen to something that's memorable. So, like I said, hope you guys enjoyed my thoughts on this record. I'm not a big reviewer guy. I don't like to put out these huge, extravagant reviews, but this record meant a lot to me coming into this year. It was something I was really looking forward to, especially after the first few singles, and I wanted to share my thoughts on it. So, hope you guys enjoyed my thoughts. Leave a comment, leave a like, let me know if you guys enjoyed me doing this kind of video and if you want to see me do one again in the future. So, thanks guys, have a good day.